Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and one of the things we enjoy doing most is introducing you to men and women in the Jewish world who are making enormous contributions to the Jewish future as well as to Jewish life today. And so on this edition of L'Chaim, I am honored to welcome Rabbi Michael Melchior, who has played an extraordinary role in Jewish life, having served as the chief rabbi of Norway, and after making Aliyah in 1986, becoming involved in Israeli politics, becoming a Knesset member, and serving as the Minister of Social and Diaspora Affairs. Michael Melchior is a courageous, outspoken, and innovative whirlwind of a force in the Jewish world. And he's been involved in a number of left-wing Jewish and Israeli organizations stressing interfaith dialogue, education, inter-Jewish relations, the environment, economics, and the Arab-Israeli peace process. And to give you an idea of Michael's vision, in 2002, he initiated an interreligious summit in Alexandria, Egypt, which brought together the Mufti of Egypt, the Grand Imam of the Al-Azhar Mosque, and the Grand Sheikh of the Al-Azhar University, as well as the Archbishop of Canterbury and Israel's chief rabbi at the time. By the way, Michael Melchior is now also a rabbi in Talpiot, Israel, with a modern Orthodox congregation. And Michael, it is wonderful having you sitting at this table. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
You know, I first want to know a little bit about you, then we talk ideas, okay? So I understand you have a long family history that goes back in Denmark. Is it 7 generations?
Well, the history goes back actually 350 years in Denmark.
Yes. When one reads about you, one reads you have your smicha from a Jerusalem yeshiva in 1980. Is that correct?
From the Jerusalem yeshiva and from the chief rabbis of Israel, the most famous Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox authorities.
Okay.
Rabbi Ovadia Yosef and other very big authorities of Israel. Some of them might have regretted since, but that's another story.
I'm sure on the contrary.
No, but
then the way it's written is you return and become, the way it said, chief rabbi of Norway.
Yes.
Which you do actively for a period of years.
Yes.
Before you make Aliyah. Even after you make Aliyah, you remain chief rabbi of Norway, and I understand you go back and forth.
Yes.
What is it like now for the Jews of Norway? And the reason I ask you this, Michael, there's a email going around on the internet. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yes.
Norway's last 819 Jews are now leaving the country, and this email goes on to bemoan the fact that the Jewish community of Norway is coming to an end. I want to know the extent to which, first of all, this is not, although it's being circulated now, it really is not a 2014 email. It's being circulated now, and many Jews who read it assume it's happening right now.
Right.
But I'm asking you in general, what's happening to the Jews of Norway?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, I got this email about, I must have got it between 400 and 500 times over the last couple of years. It's like most of the things which are written on the internet, not all the things written on the internet, but I can reassure you that actually this past Shabbat I spent with the Jewish community in Oslo, and the couple of thousands of Jews who live in Norway, they're still there. Not one of them, apparently they didn't read the email, so they didn't leave.
Okay.
And nobody left of these people. It's just rubbish. But people, because they get all these emails, that doesn't mean that there's no antisemitism in Norway, as there is in many countries around the world, which has to be taken seriously and dealt with. But these kinds of emails are not productive, and they create a hysterical situation around first of all, they're not true. and you should always, deal with truth. And there are people also famous and leading Jewish characters in this country who reinforce
That's right.
this kind of talk. And they write about Norway, or sometimes they write about Denmark or Sweden or Spain or whatever. Or England. There is always another different culprit. Somewhat it's like when they deal with the Jews. You can take phenomena about Israel and you can blow them up out of proportion, and then you get a picture which is out of proportion. You can do that with Norway also. So you should deal with the phenomena which are, and not with the phenomena which are not. There are issues in Norway which need to be dealt with, and we are dealing with them.
For example?
For example, I can tell you when I just flew into America last night, and the first question I got from the people I met just after this was the question of Brit Milah, of circumcision. And it's been a big issue, not only in Norway, but many countries of Western Europe. And this is a very big issue, and it's not going to go away. But Norway is not going to forbid circumcision, ritual circumcision, Brit Milah, on the opposite. We've made an agreement with the Norwegian government that it's going to legislate now. It's already going to happen now in the coming weeks. And for the first time, there's going to be legislation which not only permits circumcision, but also puts it into certain standards and so on, which is very important, not least for the Muslim community in Norway. And it's done after talks with us and in agreements with us and so on. But they have to understand that not everything is just blind anti-Semitism, and that there is now a new language in a post-ritual, post-religious Western Europe, where they have no understanding whatsoever for this custom, which is called circumcision. Right? Not like America, where still a lot of people, also not Jews, are circumcised. In Norway, not one person has ever been circumcised. They don't get it, and they think that it's something terrible, disgusting, barbaric, medieval, this, and they have some picture of what it is. It touches on the deepest feelings. It's a very difficult debate.
Yes.
And it's up against the debate, just as the issue of shchita, although of ritual slaughtering, although the two shouldn't be meddled together, because then everything gets
all kinds
really
of
terrible.
reasons, absolutely right.
All kinds of reasons. So what happens is that you get into the debate of rights, of children's rights, which is an important issue. I myself have led the children's rights work in Israel as the head of the Children's Rights Committee in the Knesset, the only parliament in the world which has an official committee which deals with children's rights and has a very progressive legislation on children's rights, is in the States of Israel. I'm very much for this language, but that's not the only issue at stake. And the issue that parents can choose a way and a path for their children is also at stake. And the willingness to an open debate is practically closed. It's a kind of secular dogmatism, which is more and more destroying the concept of the French Revolution, where there was a concept both of freedom from religion, but also of freedom to religion. And that idea is crumbling down in Western Europe today. And these are real issues which have to be dealt with seriously, not just with slogans, oh, they're all a bunch of anti-Semites. And those who deal with that, it's so not sophisticated, and it doesn't lead anywhere if you want to really debate the issues at hand.
Mm-hmm. When we hear anti-Semitism in Western Europe is generated by a Muslim population, do you feel that that is a fair statement, and how does it play out in Norway?
I think that it's true, and not in Norway. In Norway, it's very peripheral. Okay. But it's true that most of the Muslims also in Norway, which is a small Muslim group, relatively small, it's true that they also don't have the immune system against anti-Semitism. That's true. It's part of what we need to do. I believe that just like small children get, immune vaccinations against sicknesses, they should get that against anti-Semitism and xenophobia. We should build up such a thing. I think that in other countries in Western Europe it's much worse. In Sweden we see it in a city like Malmö, which has a very, very big Muslim population. We see it in France very much and other places. I think no doubt it's true that there are Muslim circles where today anti-Semitism and the lack of the immune systems and with the social threats which are in certain parts of the Muslim population, that might be outbursts of anti-Semitism also coming from those circles. No doubt. That is one of the places where we can expect, where there already is, and where we can expect anti-Semitism coming from, and we have to stand together. Now, I stood together with the founder of the Islamic movement in the Holy Land, Sheikh Abdallah Nimadowish, former terrorist, and who today believed totally in peace. And he spoke to the World Forum of combating anti-Semitism in Jerusalem, in the Foreign Ministry of the State of Israel. And he said, I will go, he nearly said on a crusade, but he didn't use that expression, together with my friend Rabbi Michael Melchior, and we will fight together anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. But, he said, he should not be talking about anti-Semitism, the rabbi. That won't have credibility. He should talk about Islamophobia, and I will talk about anti-Semitism, as I do in all the Arab TV and radio stations, and he does, and says what a danger that is to Islam. And that has credibility. And this we need to do much more of, but from authentic leaders who are heard in all the radical Islamic circles and amongst the political Islam and those who really have credibility in those circles. That is really important, and we don't do this.
Is it your sense that there are, within the Muslim community, strong voices who, from their perspective, express the same kind of sentiment that you do from a Jewish perspective?
Absolutely.
Why don't we hear more about them?
Because we don't want to hear.
Why don't we want to hear? It would be wonderful to hear this.
We don't want to hear. We're closed. We don't want to hear. We don't want to see. We don't want to speak.
No, I'm serious. Why?
No, I'm serious. I'm very serious.
Why wouldn't
you
Jews
don't know how many times I've spoken here in North America to big audiences, and I've talked about my ideas, and then somebody puts up their hand and they said, "Can you just mention one imam who will say the same as you?" And then I start mentioning 1 and 5 and 10 and 20, and there's silence in the audience. Then somebody else gets up and said, "Well, they are for sure not important." That's the reaction, because you don't want to hear. You just don't want to hear. You don't want to get it.
No, it's not
because
fair.
it is fair.
No, it's not that they don't want to hear it. It's not that people don't want to hear it. We would love to hear it.
Let me give you an example.
What they mean to say is we don't believe it.
Yes, but because because then if somebody says it, they say, well, then for sure this is something they're saying for outwards purposes.
Right, not in Arabic.
Not in Arabic, not to their... Then when I bring them in Arabic, what they say on Al Jazeera and what they say to the Saudi television and so on, well, they say, well, then these are not the important figures. We're not interested. We have our stereotypes. We know exactly what they believe. Now, it's true that this is a new thinking. It's
relatively new.
This is a new thinking.
How new, Michael? How new?
We're trying to develop now this whole concept. This is something which is my big thing, okay? I'm working hard on this. And it's new. I admit that this is new. But let me give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks ago in Jerusalem, we had an event which was the Yahrzeit, what do you say in English? The
Yortzeit. Anniversary.
That's a good English
It's a
word.
good, for Jews it
Yortzeit.
is.
Okay.
The anniversary.
Of a big rabbi who passed away, who was a pioneer.
Anniversary of his passing, right.
Of the 1 year ago, he was a pioneer in the work of religious peace, Rabbi Menachem Fruman, who was a rabbi of a settlement in the West Bank called Tkoa. He was an original thinker. We wanted to make an event which was for religious peace in his honor. And we did it in the biggest hall of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, which could have 1,200 people. And I invited to this event former chief rabbi, who's the most important Sephardi leader today, of Shlomo Amar. And I invited Islamists to speak on the panel. Major Islamists, one of whom was one of the founders of the Hamas, others who, the most dominant Islamic figures, in political Islamic figures. There were, the room was packed. Couldn't have one more person in the room. There were 1,200 people came. If you asked them before they came in what they expected, none of them would have believed, none of them, what they heard. And they came out saying this was a convening event for them.
What did they hear?
They heard serious Islamists who say we will not give up one hair of our Islamic beliefs. We're part of the great political Islam. These are very, very central leaders. They're not second or third or fifth level leaders, but these are the top Islamist leaders saying, we are Islamists. We believe in Islam. We want everything that the political Islam wants. And we want peace with the state of Israel. This is part of our belief. And they've written textbooks and they've written what we call fatwas and religious decisions to enforce this belief and to give it the religious basis for forwarding this. We now have centers in all of Israel and the Palestinian territories which are forwarding these ideas. Now you can say, well, we haven't heard about this. That's why I'm on Shalom Television.
I'm very...
Okay, so we have centers. You know, we have a center in the middle of Gaza. It's not our center, it's their center, but we cooperate.
Who does what?
Who works for religious dialogue and peace transformation and wants to forward a peace with the states of Israel. We have a center working in Ramallah. We're working with people, central people, on both sides of the conflict in Egypt, in Jordan, in the Gulf states, all over the Middle East, in all the countries of the Middle East. A lot of what we're doing is under the radar.
All right, I want to understand. You are dealing with people who are part of the Muslim world, the Muslim Arab world, who right now are saying to you, and they're people of stature, we are willing to share this land with the Jew. The Jew will have a Jewish state of Israel, and we will have a Muslim Palestinian state alongside it, and we are willing to share the land.
Exactly.
When you say exactly, you understand, we American Jews never hear a voice like that. Michael, we never hear it. And I don't doubt you, but I do say to you, if there are these voices, why wouldn't these be voices that are in some way being elevated in the American experience? Why isn't somebody going on Charlie Rose? Shalom TV is one thing. I'm very happy to have you here, but I don't pretend that I have the audience that Charlie Rose has. So why isn't on Charlie, why not Meet the Press? Why are not NPR? Why are there not Muslim Palestinians who are coming on and saying, we accept the notion of a Jewish state of Israel, and we're prepared to share the land?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that you will hear this over the coming months.
In the future, I'm going to.
Yes.
You do agree with me, it's not being heard at the moment.
It's not being heard at the moment, but part of the reason why it's not being heard is that people are not willing to listen. I'm saying this with full conviction. I've been saying this a long time. It includes, listen, there is a certain concept.
You came with a lovely Orthodox rabbi, a
Yes.
good friend.
Yes.
He's one of the best in all of America. You telling me he's not willing to hear this?
No, he's willing to hear
Okay.
this. That's why
he's
he
a
brought me.
he's a mainstream Orthodox rabbi.
Yes.
I believe he represents something in America.
Yes.
I believe there are people who are very, very vocal in what the danger is at the moment in making peace with a Palestinian entity that is not serious about sharing the land.
Yes.
But I believe many of them would be very happy to say, and thanks to Michael Melchior, here's 10 of them who is willing to share the land.
Let me tell you this. What's the problem? The problem is that the peace camp, also the peace camp in Israel, the left wing in Israel, which you said in the beginning, your introduction, that I belong to.
Yes, do you?
My problem is I don't belong to any camp. I belong to every camp and no camp.
So why is it written about you that way?
I don't know. I didn't write that. I didn't write that.
You do
your
not.
responsibility.
Okay, you do not want to be characterized as someone on the left.
I don't care. I work with
you
everybody.
should care. First of all, you do care, and you should care. Are you on the left?
Listen, I personally have worked. I worked together with the Labour Party. I was associated with the Labour Party. The Labour Party is regularly seen as the left, although there are those who doubt this. So that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But I work with people on the far right. I work in my group of religious peace. We have serious settler rabbis who are willing to sign, if it's a religious peace, for the solution of 2 states for 2 peoples, which is a sensation in itself, just as big a sensation as the Islamists. It's just as difficult, believe me. We have ultra-Orthodox rabbis of all kinds who are participating in this framework. So let me tell you like this. What's the problem? The problem is that those who make peace, those who are the peacemakers of the 80s, the 90s, and also those who are involved now, they have a certain perspective about why we should make peace, what I call the secular peace. This is a peace which is very secularized. It doesn't want to touch on the existential issues. It's a peace of interests. It's a peace which very much in Israel, in the Israeli debate, talks about we want to get rid of the Palestinians. We fear the Palestinians. It talks about the demographic issue. We want a Jewish Israel. That's why we need to get rid of the West Bank and Gaza, because we want a Jewish Israel. Not where I come from. I come from a different place. I want a peace of values, not because I fear the Arab or the Muslim, not because I want to get rid of them. I believe that we're back in the same land. If God wants us back in that land, then I believe that this is part of the realization of a vision of our prophets, that we are back and that we have again our homeland in the land of Israel. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and I'm grateful to God for that. But I can't at the same time think that God wanted us back to that land, but he made an accident, and therefore half the people in that land, the Palestinians. That was an accident of his. I don't think it was an accident. I think that this is part of history. I can prove it in Jewish sources. If we had time to pull out the Talmud, I would show you the sources for this also in our sources. But leave that aside for now and just talk in general terms. I think that we have to prove that the principle of not doing to the other what we hate that the others should do to us, should also apply for our relationship to the Palestinians.
We have never done to others what's done to us. Never.
Well,
we have never. And there's nothing going on in Israel that is like what was done to us.
Well, I think that if we demand of the other the recognition of self-determination for us, then we should recognize the rights of the Palestinians for
And don't we?
self-determination.
Don't we?
No, we don't.
In what way don't we?
We don't, because we don't accept philosophically, in a value manner, their rights. We don't.
I don't know why you say that.
I
we
don't.
We right now have an Israeli government with an Israeli prime minister and Israeli people, all of whom are saying the following. If we had a real peace, we're happy for them to have their state, their polity, their experiment, and none of that will help them.
Okay. I don't know. I'm sure that you're following the Israeli debate, but I might be following it also. I can tell you that there has never, it's true that our prime minister talks about something vaguely about a two-state solution.
Why is it vague?
I'll tell you why. Because he has not been willing to, not in the convening of the government, and never to pass a decision in the cabinet, because he knows that there is a tremendous majority in his party and in the cabinet against the two-state solution. He knows that.
And what could he have done that he doesn't do? No, explain it to me.
He could have.
Give me one example of something he hasn't
He could have,
passed.
for example, said that if you want to do to the other what we expect of the other to do to us, then we will, for example, draw a border. Okay? Now, he has been I don't want to. I think it's petty
you can't
go into these details.
You don't want to
but
do
you're
this.
pushing me.
Yes, you
so
have
I'll
to.
do that.
Okay.
So I think that after 8 months of negotiations, I think he could have said, besides from saying that they can't have any parts of Jerusalem, they can't have any parts of the Jordan Valley, they have to do this, they have to do that, and they have to do this. He could have said, where is this Palestinian state going to be? He has not been willing to, at any stage, he doesn't want a state on the basis of the 1967 border, which has been the accepted border for all previous governments, the cabinet which I was a member of, the other cabinets which has been, he doesn't accept that, okay? He hasn't been willing to accept any other kind of border, because he knows that the moment he will draw any kind of border to give them any kind of percentage of Judea and Samaria, then he will have 90% of his own party, which will leave him. So he doesn't do that.
And then what would happen?
And then the whole thing collapses.
And then what would happen?
Well, then
What would the Israeli people demand?
the Israeli people has to be shown, this is what I'm trying to do. We have to leave this thing which doesn't work. The present way is not going anywhere. Okay? It's not going to go anywhere. Not only because of him, also because of the Palestinian side. Okay? It's not going anywhere. We have to think out of the box. And we have to show, if the Israeli people was shown that the whole Arab and Muslim world, or 90% of it, would want a peace with Israel. It's true, Israel has to do what it has to do. We can't give them a state somewhere in the heaven. Okay? It has to be based on the 1967 borders. There is nowhere else. That's the historic compromise, which the Palestinians have accepted. Now, if the Israelis are willing to do that, then we will have to show them, and the Muslim world will have to show them. And I think that will be the game changer. That will change the paradigm.
I'm sorry, they'll have to show them what?
That the whole Muslim and Arab world will be behind such a peace.
And has the Arab world shown that yet?
I think that partly yes, but only very partly. I think that the Muslim and Arab world can show this much more clearly.
And why hasn't it yet?
It hasn't done it because I don't think anybody has presented them with a good alternative like the religious peace which I'm talking about, which comes from a different place, comes from a place with a joint belief in one God, in joint values, in not crushing another human being, because every other human being is created in the image of God.
Are you suggesting that Israelis don't have that value system?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that Israelis have it, and I'm suggesting that Muslims have it. I'm just suggesting that I'm not attacking not the Israelis and not the Arabs. I'm saying let's build a basis for both Israelis and Arabs, but which is joint for us. I don't want to attack one side or the other. That's not my part. That's not my thing.
I need you to clarify something else for me, because again, and it's easy for me, in Connecticut, in New York, in New Jersey. I'm not there. You're there.
Right.
But I talk to as many people as I can. I visit Israel as often as I can, and I have a sense from there. But it's in your blood.
Excellent.
I want you to explain something to me. It is my understanding, if I'm wrong, you tell me, that there is a serious, not minor, a serious thrust in the Muslim world that basically says, this land is mine, and that as much as Nablus is mine, Jaffa is mine. And this 67 border is a wholly artificial line that comes from the armistice line, but that doesn't matter how it came. It's an artificial line, and that from the Muslim perspective, from the Palestinian perspective, and I'm not meaning every Palestinian, but for the Palestinians who are more in power, the truth for them is, and that it's their truth, that ultimately all of this land belongs to them, and that therefore the notion of their sharing doesn't have the same resonance that it has to the Jew, who also, by the way, believes all the land is Eretz Yisrael. I'm almost done, Eretz Yisrael. But within the organized Jewish community, ever since the 30s, there has been a formal commitment to a notion that ultimately the Jew will share the land because there are two peoples here, and it's the only way for it to work. At the same time, you're dealing with a Palestinian, Arab, Muslim mentality which says, ultimately, all of this land belongs to me, and that therefore it is asking me to make an enormous sacrifice of who I am for me to say to you, I'll accept Hebron and Nablus, but I'm not going to accept Jaffa and Haifa. Am I wrong in this understanding of a Muslim mentality?
I don't want to make that competition. It doesn't
Why is it
interest
competition?
me. Because you're saying that more of them than of us.
No, I'm saying
Say
that.
that.
I am saying.
I don't care
I am
about
saying
that.
that there is
First of all,
an institutionalized,
okay.
institutionalized idea of sharing, and there is no similar institutionalized
Just a moment.
side
First
of
of all,
sharing on the other side.
Okay. First of all, the polls show that a majority, not a majority of Israelis and a majority of Palestinians want a two-state solution.
That's not true.
That
is not, but excuse me, that's just factually not correct.
Okay.
The polls at one point had it up to 80-85% of Israelis who, at a time of great optimism in believing that there was an interlocutor, were ready to share the land. The only reason it's come down is when you ask Israelis, do you believe it's possible? There is much less of a belief inside the Israeli people now who
if you ask if it's
possible. But if there were an honest peace, it's 80-85% of Israelis who are ready to share the land.
I totally disagree with you, but that's fine.
Okay.
We can disagree. I want to tell you that today the percentage is much lower. I want to tell you that in the religious Israel, which is growing, right, we have more than 50% of the children now going to the religious education in Israel, to the Orthodox/ultra-Orthodox, a vast majority to the ultra-Orthodox education. The vast majority of them do not believe in that anymore.
Do not believe
in the two-state solution.
They don't want to share the land anymore.
No, they don't want to share the land.
Okay.
So if that is your presumption...
No, but it's still a small percentage.
It's not a small percentage anymore. That doesn't exist
anymore.
What
percentage is it?
Well, we're talking about at least a third of the people, but don't forget that third has an influence over another third who look towards the religion as a major legitimization for who they are. Amongst the Palestinians, the figures are more or less the same. More or less the same. But I'm not into that competition. It doesn't interest me. I want to change the paradigm. I want this third of the Jews and of the Palestinians on board on the peace. That's what I'm working with. So I've gone to those who are most opposed, those who are spreading, I agree with you, those who are spreading not only that the whole land belongs to them, to the Waqf. I've gone to those who have written the textbooks that we should be blown up, the jihad. I've met with the biggest leaders who have written about how it's a religious commitment to blow up the future of Judaism in the land of the Waqf of Palestine. Okay? You don't have to tell me. I have met more than any other Israeli. I can sign you that. The leading Muslims in the whole of the Muslim world. And I'll tell you my result of this. Nobody has ever presented them with the suggestion I came to them with. They said to me, if a peace is based on what your coalition is talking about, then we're on board.
Articulate it for me. What is your suggestion?
My suggestion is that the peace is based on a religious peace, on a peace between the monotheistic religions, Judaism and Islam, first of all, which is the conflicting parties, but also Christianity, based on the belief of one God, the responsibility of the religious leaders to take responsibility for their communities, okay? That the solution always has to be a negotiated solution, never a solution with violence. That a solution has to be based on two states for the two peoples, based on the religious decision-making which we already have in written. I have never met anybody who under these parameters are not willing to say, if this is not a secular peace, but if this is the parameter of a piece of values which you're suggesting to us, then we'll be on board. Then we put aside the jihad. We know, we believe that then we will make that historic compromise, just as Judaism believes that all the land is ours, but that we have to, for sake of higher values, the sanctity of human life, the honor of God, and the future of our society, the respect of the other, put that aside in order to create a historic peace in that land. That doesn't mean that we don't dream of Eretz Yisrael HaShlema.
I know. Yes, I understand.
So that is the concept. And I believe that if we approach the peace with that concept, we will come much, much further than going down the same blind alley as the peacemakers have done. And I've supported those efforts. And I will continue to support those efforts. But it just doesn't work. And I think that those who were opposed the whole time, don't forget, we had our Baruch Goldstein, we had our Yigal Amir. We had.
But you make such a strong case. Why do you want to compromise it? Baruch Goldstein was such an anomaly, and he was criticized by every.
But you're wrong. You don't read all the books which are coming out, which are making him the hero.
From right-wing crazies?
Yeah, but you call them right-wing crazies, but you don't know the effect of the Jewish underground, which was taken with all the plans of the Jewish underground, but which had its arm into the Knesset and into the cabinet, and where everybody was let out of prison in no time, after the terrorist acts which they had planned, and which some of them were effectuated. You don't understand the weight. You can talk about that the plan of the Jewish people since the 30s has been political compromise in two states.
Yes.
But then how do you explain that every cabinet has kept on building in the other states in a way which will make the two-state solution not viable. How can you explain that? If I seriously come to the table and I say, we make a historic compromise, this is Israel, this is Palestine, why do I keep then putting the highest building number of all buildings I build in the other state? Can you explain that? Can anybody explain that? Why this last year when we've been negotiating was the rate of growth 123% of the buildings in Judea and Samaria, much more than the rest of the country where everybody is desperate for building housing for young couples. Why is it forcing everybody, like my children, my own children, if they want to buy anything beautiful and affordable, to go and live in the places where we claim we want the Palestinian state to be created? That is the policy of the Israeli cabinet. Now, if you think that this is going honestly to a negotiation table, it becomes more and more difficult to explain that this is honest negotiation. If we were honestly negotiating, we would say, well, we are honestly going to the table, we will give this a chance. When we signed Oslo, there were 120,000 settlers. That was 20 years ago. Now there are 370,000 settlers.
What happened in the interim? But I understand what you're saying, and I am sensitive to it. My problem is I understand what the Israeli who sees it differently than you says also. Oslo happened, and the next thing you know, we had an intifada. We had Camp David, and you had an intifada. And that ultimately, there was a time when, if they were serious, if the Palestinians were ever serious, and if I'm Abbas, by the way, if I'm Mahmoud Abbas, I couldn't care less about a settlement. I'd say to Netanyahu, I'll see you in Ramallah on Thursday, and we'll hammer out a peace. And then I'll call your bluff. I'll call your bluff. Then take down the settlements you tell me you're doing. I saw you take them down in Yamit. I saw what happens in Gush Katif. You tell me we'll ready. Fine. But there is so much to be gained from a peace
I
for
don't
the
want
Palestinians.
to defend Mahmoud Abbas.
Okay, but the answer is...
Mahmoud Abbas told me last time...
The answer is... You asked what's the answer. The answer is the following. You've got a piece of land which at the moment belongs to nobody. It is true
But you're saying...
No, I am saying we are prepared to share the land if anybody will share it with me. But if they're not willing to share it with me, I have no obligation then to act as if it's theirs. I have no obligation to do that.
But you were saying that all the Israeli government said that they wanted two states.
Yes, but there's nobody on the other side who says we'll share it with me. All they'll do is set up kids with bombs strapped to their bellies and blow up kids in pizza shops.
Well, first of all, listen, Mahmoud Abbas, last time I went to him, he said to me, listen, Sharon said to me, give me 3 days without terror and you will see we'll cut a deal. I said, okay. Now, he says, now there's been 8 years. That's and I see the same arguments being told. Why do you put me in the situation where I have to defend him? I don't want to defend him. But you cannot say that the Israeli government...
You have to be, you're putting yourself in that position. I'm not putting you in that. What you're basically is coming here and saying is, and I am not insensitive to what you're saying. I want the audience to hear what you have to say in its large. And I wanted to say to you before, listen, Michael, why don't you come next time from Israel with an imam, and I'll have you both on Shalom TV. And from here we'll go to Madison Square Garden, and we'll go to Larry Ziegler's synagogue, and we'll go to any Jewish federation you want to go to. But bring me somebody with you who says as beautifully as you do what you do, because at the moment we don't hear it. And I believe you. I don't doubt anything you've described. I only say the following. Let's make it real. Make it real. You have an invitation on Shalom TV where Jews and non-Jews watch all the time. Two of you sit together, not just a rabbi saying nice things. I want to hear this from you. Bring me anybody you respect, and I'll trust you in terms of who that person is. You bring me somebody and let them talk alongside of you in the same way.
Listen, I don't expect you to take my word for it.
I do take your word for it.
Who am I to tell you?
I can see it in your eyes who you are.
I hear the same story again and again and again. It just won't go through because we have our prejudices, and we can't. I heard this in Jerusalem. They said, let us hear from the Islamists. So I bring the Islamists again and again and again. And the Islamists, for me, it's more important, with all due respect to Shalom TV, I think it's the most important Jewish channel here, no doubt. But for me, it's more important that they speak on Al Jazeera.
I don't disagree.
That's where I want them to speak. I want them to keep their credibility. That's important for me. And when they come and when they appear in Jerusalem, in the Hebrew University, and they appear in Tel Aviv University, and they appear in front of the religious audiences, and they say what they're saying, and it's on the net, and everybody can go in. If they want to open their eyes and their ears, everybody can go in and hear it. We don't keep things a secret. It will be also in front of the whole world. Don't worry. Don't worry, it'll be. But you have to, we have to open our hearts also to be willing to hear and to be willing to say, I understand that every Jew, I've been in that situation also, protecting everything the Israeli government does, no matter what, protecting the credibility, I understand very much, protecting that the Israeli Prime Minister is serious when he says, I want a two-state solution. It's the most important for the future of the State of Israel. And not understanding that he's undermining what he says when he puts all the settlers in the other state. I understand that you have to defend that.
Don't say it that way.
don't have to defend that.
I'm not defending it.
Yes, you are.
But if I'm defending, but it's not because I have to. It's not because I have to.
No, because you believe it.
That's correct. That's a little bit different way of saying it.
Okay, so you believe that is forwarding the two-state solution in a good way. I think
I don't
not.
believe it. I don't believe it hurts the two-state solution.
Okay, you
at
think
all.
that doesn't hurt the two-state solution?
Not.
I think that it hurts. I don't think that it'll eliminate the two-state solution.
Well, we agree there, don't we?
We agree.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you're right. It's much more important for them to be heard on Al Jazeera and at Hebrew University. But you know what? American Jewry counts too.
Yes.
And it would be interesting for American Jews who do have a certain kind of, they lobby, we care. It would be nice for American Jews to hear you sit with an imam and say this.
So people will say here, listen, so you found some imam. Who is he? Who cares? You know your people better than I. Believe me, I've been across this so many times. There've been imams who have been here and who've said, I want the leadership. I'm talking about the absolute, the most serious leadership of the Islamic world. We have very, very high potentials. We're not talking about just a meeting of an imam and a rabbi.
Then you'll be successful. You will be successful.
Well, I hope so.
You will.
This is what we're working for.
You will bring us closer, and I don't mean to the Mashiach, but you'll bring us closer. No, I'm going to be a big fan of yours. I'm going to root you on. I am skeptical. You understand that.
Of course.
And by the way, my skepticism comes from years of understanding in a certain way. And if there are other things to understand, I want to understand. I want the audience to understand. I want to give you the chance. But I'm a fan. I am rooting you on. Okay. I am just skeptical. And I want to ask you one more thing.
I'm also skeptical. That's fine.
You're skeptical.
You have to be
You're skeptical of what?
I'm skeptical of myself. I'm skeptical of everything I do. Every day I ask myself, is this real? When I sit with, you won't believe the people I've been sitting with. Every time I go for a new meeting, every time I open new doors, it's difficult. Don't think, we're doing something which nobody ever has tried before. And I don't disagree with you. There is an immense hatred against Israel, against Jews in the Arab world, an immense. And we can't fight that just with putting out letters or saying how terrible it is. That won't fight it. I think that what we're doing might be a beginning of something which is interesting, which is worthwhile investing in, and it's opened doors. I know that our activities has stopped a lot of terror which would have happened if our activities had not been. I know that there are places where they're teaching in the Muslim world a total different message than what was taught before. Well, that's the beginning, but it can go far, far deeper than that. And I think it's worthwhile.
It can go
Listen, what do we have to lose? I think also in the Bet Midrash, in our schools. I know that you put it aside and say these are only crazy extremists.
They are.
Believe me, the opinions in Israel, if you look at polls, I see you read polls, but I'm not sure you read all of them. The opinions in Israel and the racism in Israel against the other, against Arabs, against Muslims, is on a rise, very heavy rise. You say, well, there are good reasons for that, so
They're
good reasons.
There are understandable
yes,
reasons.
everything is understandable.
No, don't minimize it. You say it that way, it sounds like you don't take it seriously.
I don't take it seriously. I don't accept any justification for the racism we have in Israel.
It's not about
it's eating us up from inside.
Nobody's justifying it. Nobody's justifying
Yes, because
it.
when you say it's understandable, it's justifying
No,
it.
they're human beings. They're human beings
Yes.
here.
No, that is not being a human being. The racism when I stand in front of a group of 2,000 high school kids and somebody says to them, what should we do with the Arabs here? And they said, laharog, 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 to kill, to kill, to kill.
Israeli kids are saying that?
Israeli kids, yes, sir.
In what building are you in?
In high school, not religious high school.
A secular Israeli
Secular
high school.
Israeli high
You have
school.
Israeli high school kids saying
Yes.
laharog, which
Yes.
means kill them.
Kill them, yes. And I'm sorry, I'm living this every day. I speak to high school kids every day. This is what we're going through. Now you can say, well, that's understandable, and I don't accept it. I'm sorry.
I don't
this
accept
is
it either.
eating us up, and there is no justification for it. And therefore, we need to do dramatic acts
Like
to
what?
stop this.
Like what?
Like what we're trying to do.
By the way, I'm rooting you on. At the same time, what I've heard you say is, I'm trying to frame the concept of a peace between Jews and Muslims in a different way.
Let me, by the way, say also, besides from this work, we work with Jews and Arabs inside Israel also.
Yes.
We're building youth parliaments together.
Yes.
We're doing work in the community.
Kolakavod.
This is all
100%.
part of the same concept. We're also working with Jews and Jews together. This is all parts of the same
want you to be
concept.
right. We all want you to be right. And for you to tell me, yeah, there's some right-wing Jews who really want the whole thing and they don't want to make peace with the Arabs, they do not count. They don't count. We're all rooting you on. The problem is there have been years and years and years where it looks as if Israel has made real offers that have been rejected time and time again. And I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, does it matter to you whether Abbas and the Palestinians do acknowledge Israel as a Jewish state?
That's become a very problematic issue.
Why should it be problematic?
It's
Do the imams you talk to who are really seeing this vision that you have and are understanding what you call a religious Zionism, a religious peace is possible, would they say to you, of course Israel is a Jewish state?
Listen, it's become problematic because we've turned it into something problematic. This was an issue which was never on the table till 2007. Because we've turned it into the core issue now. Netanyahu never took it up as an issue. None of the previous prime ministers ever took it up as an issue. It was never an issue in our negotiations.
Okay,
with
that's
the
really
Egyptians,
irrelevant,
with the
though,
Jo-
isn't it? It's irrelevant.
It is relevant. It is very relevant. Because the Palestinians just don't understand why this suddenly has become so important for us.
And
so
you
what
can't
they're
explain,
saying
you can't
is-
explain it to the people you talk to?
I could. But because this has become suddenly the core issue, they think that this must be a catch somewhere. Yeah, but because can you explain it?
Of course.
Yes, so what's the
Of course.
explanation? What Abbas says is the following. I'll tell you what he says. He says, listen, we have recognized the historic compromise from our part, the historic compromise of the division of Palestine, with 22% to the Palestinians and 78% to the Israelis. We have accepted that this division will last forever and ever. We will sign an agreement which is the end of all demands. We recognize the state of Israel as the state of Israel. If the state of Israel wants to define itself, whatever it wants to define itself, that is the privilege of the state of Israel, just as we, as the state of Palestine, will define ourselves. That is the end of this story.
Okay, I'll answer you.
Yes.
And incidentally, part of the problem is what is the fact? And if you hear different facts, then you draw different conclusions. What I understand Abbas to have said, and only to go this far, is there will be two states. He doesn't even it's not even two states for two people. And the problem that the Israeli faces is, what does Abbas really want this second state to be? If Abbas is not willing to
That's
say...
your interpretation.
That's what I understand.
Yes, but that's not what he says.
If in fact, I have not heard him say any of what you've said.
What I said is a direct quote, which he said the last time I met with him, and he said it another 10 times to all the Arab television stations in a press conference together with me.
Okay,
exactly what I said here.
If he's able to say that,
yes.
what does he give up by adding the fact that we understand this second
I'll
state
tell you what.
is a Jewish state?
I'll tell you what. He believes, because this is what many Israelis say, and I can show you many of the cabinet ministers also, that by saying a Jewish state, he is acknowledging the Zionist narrative, which also means that Jews inside the state of Israel, not only by the law of return, but Jews inside the state of Israel have more rights by law than the Palestinian minority inside the state of Israel. Now, this is what people in Israel, including central cabinet ministers, are telling. Now, he says, why should I acknowledge that? I don't want to acknowledge that. Now, you can debate if that's right or that's wrong. The president of the State of Israel, Shimon Peres, and several other central ministers in the State of Israel say that this is totally unnecessary, that he should do that. So if they say that, why are we so uptight about this? If he says what I said before, and he signs giving up the rights of return, end of claims,
If he does that, it doesn't matter what he calls the state of Israel.
Okay, that's the story.
I have not heard him willing to give up the right of return.
But that's the substance of the negotiations. That's what the negotiations are about. That's our demand, and I support that demand. That's what the negotiations are about.
No significant right of return.
Yes, absolutely.
And you believe that, but basically you believe Abbas is ready to sign that?
Yes, absolutely.
From your perspective, Abbas is not putting up any roadblocks to this agreement.
I'm not saying he's not putting up roadblocks. I think he's giving out a wrong message to his people, to this agreement. I think both sides are telling that the other side doesn't want peace. And you don't make peace under those circumstances. I think this is not an atmosphere you make peace under. I think this is bad. I don't know of any peoples who make peace under such an atmosphere. But if you look at all the conflicts which has been solved, there is a process of legitimization which come as a preparation for the peoples to make peace.
Yes.
That doesn't exist on both sides. Abbas is saying that the Israeli government has no interest whatsoever in making peace with the Palestinians. His proof to this is the settlement buildings. Right? The Israelis are saying that Abbas is not partner for peace. There's never going to be peace. The minister of the foreign minister, the minister of defense, is saying there's never going to be peace, at least not in our lifetime. Most of the cabinet ministers are saying that they're against the two-state solution. They're sending messages to the peoples that this is an impossible thing. This is just not going to happen. We have 1.5 billion Muslims in this world. I am working with people from all the Muslim countries. And I think that we're onto something which is right, which is true, which is deep and profound, and which is also very simple and naive.
I want you to know I remain skeptical, but not of you. I love your soul. I would much rather you be right than anybody else. I wish you kol tuva hatzlacha, continue to do what you're doing. I wish you come many, many times, sit in that chair, whether you're sitting just you and I, or whether you bring other people with you. You are really a very, very, yotzei min haklal. Thank you very, very much. Michael, this has been a real honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it. My meeting with Rabbi Michael Melchior, Chief Rabbi of Norway, former Israeli Knesset member, a member of the Israeli cabinet, and one of the most creative activists on the world Jewish scene today. I hope you enjoyed getting to know him and to hear his perspective, whether you agree with it or not. I hope it's made you think, and that you're really happy that there is a Shalom TV, which will give you a chance to hear people from all sides of the story, all sides of the issue, who bring very different views. And then it's our job, it's your job, it's my job, it's our job to really try to understand as much as we can. And Michael has referred to slogans, and the truth is that it's important for us to be as honest as we can and evaluating as best as we can whatever is going on in the Jewish world. And Michael is a voice who's helping us, at least challenging us in that way. And again, it's not so much that I disagree with his vision. You've heard me many times, you know where I stand. I very, very much hope that there is a two-state solution, because the Jew has always said, share the land. Michael is telling me that there is a significant group within the Palestinian Muslim world that also is willing to share the land. I hope he's right. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have through the ideas and positions expressed by Michael Melchior. Please be in touch with me this week. Email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. And so until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM. To GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.